In a world where everyone knows everything. Yeah, right. One dad stands below everyone and yells, "I know nothing."
Please welcome.
This is the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast.
All right, everybody, this is the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast. Today I have with me Kim Hamer, and Kim has a very emotional story regarding her husband and getting sick with cancer and passing away. But why I wanted to have Kim on the podcast was because out of this horrible situation came her life's work, and that's helping businesses and others to deal with individuals that are going through having loved ones that have cancer, maybe unfortunately, even if they pass away because of cancer. And we're all have difficulty, I think, knowing what to say. And Kim, and in a business arena, makes it even harder because you still have to succeed and still have to do things. And so Kim's main goal here is to help pay forward the support and kindness she got while helping businesses, be able to succeed while also helping to support their employees that may be dealing with these things. So Kim, so happy to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
So Kim, I know you probably have told this story a lot of times, probably hundreds of times. But can you take us back to what got you into 100 Acts of Love? That's the name of your book, the name of your company, your website. Tell us about the situation and where that sprang from.
Sure. So my husband, who was an athlete, played basketball in college and always took care of his body. We were sort of the stupidly stereotypical organic eating family, was diagnosed with stage 4 large B-cell lymphoma. It was a super aggressive lymphoma. We were originally treating it, I think you'll appreciate this being a husband, at first we were treating it with ibuprofen and cough syrup because those were the symptoms that were showing up. And then when he said he wasn't feeling well, like the good wife that I was like, he said he was having trouble breathing. And I was like, oh, here, just take some of my asthma medicine. So we tried treating it with that at first as well. We went to the doctor and it was just like you would picture it on TV. The doctor, after doing an exam of my husband and doing an x-ray, the doctor came into the room, laced his fingers together, put them on the exam table and looked at my husband and said, you have cancer. We have to do a biopsy to find out what kind it is. It is serious enough that we need to start working on this right now. And that was Friday at 3 p.m. We made 3 phone calls that day. We called his parents, we called my parents, and my husband called his boss. And the next 7 months were very difficult, for us and our family. But something I noticed during that time was that some of our friends knew exactly what to do and were so incredibly helpful. And a lot of our friends, I'm going to say the majority of our friends, didn't know what to do or what to say. And sometimes they kind of stumbled along and figured it out. And sometimes, we actually lost some friendships. So fast forward 7 months later, my husband is unentangled from cancer, and we are trying to put our life back together, our marriage back together, are just kind of stumbling forward. And as we're doing that, a little less than 2 years later, the cancer came back again, stage 4. And then 4 months after that, he died. Our kids at the time were 12, 9, and 7. And again, our community kind of, really came forward and supported us. And I think there's an idea out there that, I must be an extremely strong or courageous individual to get through and navigate my husband's death. But really what I often tell people, it is the hundreds and hundreds of things that people did for us during that time. And, when he had cancer and after he died, that allowed me to have the courage to stand up again. One of my favorite sayings is, your back up is up against, it's great that your back up is up against the wall because it's a good sport. And, all the things that people did for us became that wall for myself and allowed me to grieve and to, try to put our lives back together in a very different manner after my husband died. So a couple years after that, I sat down and wrote a book called 100 Acts of Love, A Girlfriend's Guide to Loving Your Friend Through Cancer or Loss. And I wrote it for the joke is I wrote it for myself because had I been my friend, I wouldn't have known what to do. I would have been just like all those other people. I would have said the wrong things. There's a phrase we'll talk about later that is the worst phrase that we say, but it's the most common phrase you hear. And I would have said that. I would have wondered why I wasn't being called and being asked to help. And so I wanted people to know, one, that you can help, and two, how simple and easy it is to help. There's this idea that you have to, if you're going to sign up to do meals, you need to bring meals for the next 10 years. And it's not that intense. It's really the simple and easy things that you can do that really make a difference. Fast forward, I go back into the HR field, and I noticed the same thing at work that I noticed that happened in our private lives. Employers don't know what to do when an employee is diagnosed with cancer or is dealing with a partner who's diagnosed with cancer. There's sort of this massive panic of, what do you talk about? How do you do it? A lot of times the employee who's dealing with the diagnosis or with their partner who's being diagnosed feels, unsupported. But on the other side, there's a team who wants to support them. There's a manager who wants to support them. There's HR who want to support them, but no one's really sure how to have those compassionate and also equally productive conversations to move forward. And so that's, I'm an HR executive, and that was sort of my sweet spot. So that's how the two came together, and that's how this consultancy business was launched.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can understand where there would be a need for that because, as you mentioned, and as we kind of touched on before, it's difficult when you're close and there's a close relationship. It's even harder, I think, when you're not really sure and there's only a business relationship, right? And still got to get things done, but also want to be supportive. And I think to your point, if you ask most HR people, most business leaders, and they hear about it, their immediate reaction is, oh, how can we support them? But then it's to your point, right? It's the translating into those day by day things that are providing that support. So I'm sure there's a real need, and you can provide that to your clients. So let's just talk about it from a personal standpoint. Okay.
Sure.
And maybe it's better to start with what not to say. So you're a friend of someone who has either their significant other has cancer, just found out, or they've been dealing with it with a little bit, or maybe it's your close friend. What are some of the worst things to say? You said it was one of the most common things people say. So,
Yes.
So give it to us. What is it?
So here it is, audience. And you've said it before. If you need anything, let me know, or some version of that. And on the surface, it feels like you are being so helpful. It really does. It feels like, okay, I'm in there and you really do mean anything. But there's 3 specific reasons why it's not a great thing to say. One, what is anything? Right? I mean, during the first diagnosis, I had a toddler. So did that mean that you were willing to take your beautiful brand new BMW and pick up my vomiting toddler from preschool? Or did that mean that you were willing to run out and get a gallon of milk when I needed it, right? Anything is just too big. The second reason it's not helpful is that you are now asking me, the person who's in crisis, to take apart my day, my very complicated, average, but complicated day, and to find one thing that you might be willing to do. And what I found during my experience, and when I've talked to widows and people with cancer, is it's really hard to figure out how someone can help you, because 2 reasons. One, because it's just hard to figure out. It's just, and 2, because even if you do figure it out, then you have to have the courage to ask somebody to do it. And that's the 3rd reason why it's not a great offer, is because this person, let's say they do figure out the one thing. Let's say it is that I need you to come read to my dying grandmother. Now, one, I have to sift through my memory and try to remember who said, if you need anything, let me know, which is a lot of people. 2, I then have to have the courage, when I'm feeling so incredibly vulnerable, to call you up, to ask you to do something, and take a chance of hearing you go, oh, okay, do you need that today? Right? That rejection. And when someone's in crisis, they cannot manage any more rejection. They're extremely vulnerable. So whether you've said it, you've said it in the workforce, you say it at home, you say it to your friends, So you're asking the person who's in crisis to figure out what you mean, what they need, and then to ask you. And so it's not a fantastic phrase. What I often tell people to do is figure out what you can do, one thing that you're willing to do, and be specific and offer more than once. So that's the other piece too, is, when I speak, I ask people to raise their hands. How many of you are really good at giving help? And hands go up. And I say, okay, keep your hand up if you're really good at receiving help. And in an audience of 100 people, there's like 2 people with their hands up. We are not good at receiving help. And even in a crisis when we know we need help, it's really hard to say yes to the support. So when you're really specific about what you're willing to do, and you offer more than once, that person will, 1, take you seriously, and 2, when that specific thing comes up, they're going to remember and they're going to call you. So that's the big one. I tell people, just stay away from that phrase. Another one that people often do is we sometimes call it the puppy dog, how are you? They come up to you, they really want to know, but their eyes get really big. They put their hand on your shoulder, on the upper arm, and they go, how are you? Right. And it's more of a female thing, but guys will do like, hey, how are you? And so again, you're asking someone, what you're saying to them is, I want the juicy gossip. Tell me everything that's going on. And it's not particularly warming or caring. It feels a little bit intrusive. So what I often say, if you really want to know, and if you have the time, you can certainly check in, but try making it more specific. How are you right now? I was thinking about you today. How are you doing right now? How are you doing today? How was that doctor's appointment yesterday? Right? Be very, very specific, because you can even tell in the voice when your friend says, hey, how you doing? Like, we all do that, right? But when your friend says, Kim, I saw this thing on TV and it made me think about what it must be like to be a widow. How are you doing with that right now? And then you're asking very specifically, and you're leaning in, and it makes me feel really heard. And really, that's the name of the game. That's the number one thing that you want the person who's dealing with this crisis to feel. You want them to feel like they're being heard, like their journey is being witnessed. And we all can relate to this because we call our friends up when something funny happens to us or something bad happens to us. We want someone to witness what just happened to us. And so it's the same thing when there's a cancer diagnosis.
So how does someone, if they are supposed to be specific, is it just them looking at stuff that they are able to do and offering that to the individual? Because sometimes I think maybe the fear is that I don't really know what they need. And
Right.
So is it a matter of, like, for your situation, you had kids. So if I was a parent and I knew that my kid went to the same school as your kid, then that's a way that I could delve in and say, hey, if you ever need me to pick up your kid from school and I pick up mine,
Right.
tell me. Can I pick up the
Yes.
kid? Can I pick up, your son or daughter? But outside of that, I mean, are there other ways that you can kind of determine what specific things they may need?
Yeah, absolutely. And I run through this. So you just sit down and think about your day, right? I mean, when we think about what's the first thing we do when we get out of bed, most of us go use the bathroom. Is there toilet paper in the bathroom in the house? Is there a toothbrush? Are there clean towels? Is there shampoo? Right? Maybe some of us immediately look at our cell phone. Has that cell phone bill been paid? Is the phone being charged? Do they need a new charger? And I know sometimes these things feel very weird. It feels weird to go up to your coworker and go, so is your toilet, do you have enough toilet paper in the house? But there are even things at work when you think about your coworkers. Some coworkers are always putting together agendas for meetings, right? And if they're dealing with cancer or their loved one has cancer, it may just feel like too much to come up with the agenda. So it's, hey, can I take over doing the agenda for you? Or it's helping with a project. I'd love to chip in and help with this project over the next 2 weeks because I know you're going to be out a lot. So I think what happens is people get fearful that they're going to offer the wrong thing. And fear plays a huge role in our inability to really connect with our coworkers. And I often say it is so much better to offer and get it wrong than to not offer at all. Because again, every time you're offering, what you're saying to the person is, I care about you. I want to do something to help. And depending on your relationship and depending on where they are in their journey, they actually might even be able to say, hey, I don't need that help, but can you do this? And you're going to be thrilled. You're like, yes, I can do it. I'm so excited to be able to help in some way. I think the other fear is that it feels like it's not enough. And it's not. It's never going to be enough because you can't cure cancer. You can't cure the illness. You can't bring someone back from the dead. And so it's really us trying to manage our own personal powerlessness, trying to accept it, because what you do doesn't have to rock or change the world. It's the smallest little things combined with the small things that everyone else is doing that really make the journey, I'm not going to say manageable, but make it feel, I felt like I was in a nest. I felt like I felt like there were several different layers under myself and my children that we would have to fall through before we fell to the floor. And there's something very comforting about that. I knew we were going to be taken care of. And I often believe that's why Art was really willing to go, was because he had this sense of the community's got them and they'll be okay. So it's about being part of that special community by doing those small little acts that make the biggest difference.
Wow, it's pretty powerful. So you mentioned a couple of things that we should say, and I want to focus in on friend. Anything else as a friend? So out of the workplace still, as a friend, anything else we can say?
Sure. I mean, we often start with, I'm sorry. And that feels so like, because we use it so often, it doesn't feel powerful. But saying, I'm so sorry, this is part of your journey. Like this, it's really okay to say, this sucks. Like, it's okay to call it for what it is. One of the most powerful things that was said to me by a few friends was, they were speechless. They were like, I don't even know what to say. And that's really powerful because the experience that someone you care about is going through does deserve speechlessness. It is a horrible situation, a scary situation, a terrifying situation, and it's okay to be speechless. So, when you first get that news, it is okay to not know what to say and to voice that you don't know what to say. And if you've said something like, if you need anything, let me know, it is perfectly okay and even more wonderful to go back and to say, oh my gosh, I had no idea what I said was so silly and so wrong. I'm so sorry. Here's what I want to do for you. Or I just didn't know what to say. And I just felt the need to say something. But I'm here for you if you need your kids get a ride back from school after school. I'm happy to do it.
I think that the silence thing is so true, because I think that's another thing that we're afraid of, is just sitting in silence. But in a way, when you're silent and they're silent, you're almost still together dealing with the gravity of that news. And sometimes we're so in such a hurry to speak that we can't be silent. And sometimes that's the best thing. Just holding a hand and being silent can be the best thing.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
there was
go ahead.
No, I was going to tell a quick story.
Yeah, sure.
We were picking up our school, the school the kids were at. They did these kind of all school camping trips, and my youngest and my middle daughter, who was supposed to stay overnight, decided to come home. So I went to the school to pick up the kids, and we were waiting for the bus. And it was a month after my husband had died, and I just started to cry, just sob. And this woman, her name is Marta Todd, and she just came and sat next to me. And then she said, she kind of inched her way over, and then I was sitting on steps. And so her knee was touching my shoulder, and it was just so comforting. She didn't say anything to me. She just sat with me while I was sobbing. And then after I was done, it was done. She gave me this wonderful, big, big hug. But that's the power of silence. There's no fixing the grief. There is only witnessing and sitting in it with somebody. And it took a lot of courage on her part, because most people want to fix it. They want to get a tissue. They want to, pat it. They want to tell you it'll be okay. But the most powerful thing to me was just having the courage she showed to sit with me while I was going through that in that moment.
Yeah. What a great story. And the fact that you, it sounds like you still know this individual and probably made a huge impact on your life and still continue to be a good relationship. So
Yes.
what about, as a coworker? So now we're moving into the realm of business, right? You have relationships with coworkers, some stronger than others, right? What
Mhm.
do you say to a coworker? Anything
You
else?
can say all those same things, because I think one of the things that we make the mistake of, and I think COVID really kind of turned us on our heads on this, is we used to always be very like, work is work, home is home. And some people were okay with kind of crossing the lines, but you were never really sure who was. And so you didn't really always want to, broach, cross that line. And now it's okay to talk about it. You can say, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. It makes me really sad. And then to sit in the silence. And, if you let the person who's dealing with this cancer just have a few minutes, they will either talk about it or they'll say thank you and turn around and go back to work. But either way, you're just giving them an opportunity to kind of figure out how they want to react, and then you take their lead. And I think that's really important, is just to acknowledge it. Ignoring it is the worst thing ever. It's basically saying, hey, no big deal. Like, what you're going through is no big deal. And they also, for anyone who's dealing with this, they get that you're ignoring it, that you're uncomfortable. So they actually, you actually lose respect in their eyes, which is something that we talk a lot about when I talk to people with cancer. They lose respect for their friends because they don't have the courage to say something to them.
Hmm.
Um, and we're at work, this all, of course, there's a lot of variables because it depends what your relationship is with the employee. Are you the manager? Are you the coworker? Or is this your manager who has been diagnosed? It depends on who knows and how many people know. And so there's so many variables that occur in the workplace that need to be navigated carefully, that often people often forget.
And it could be when you acknowledge it and bring it up to your coworker that they may say, yeah, I don't really want to talk about it. Work is my escape. And this is where I can kind of forget about it for a few hours a day.
Exactly.
And then that's okay. But you've acknowledged it. You've shown that you're concerned about them. And because everybody's going to be different with that. So what if you're a leader
Exactly.
and it's one of your employees? There's probably a little bit more that you should do as far as
Yes.
providing that initial support.
Yes. So one of the things that I did mention, when the coworkers, ultimately, the team should be getting the lead from the manager on how to manage this situation. So when I work with leaders, I work with them to really sit down. First of all, we have to talk about how they feel about cancer, because if they have cancer in their past, it can trigger, like, it just brings them up memories, and they can cause them to really do things that they're completely unaware of that they're doing, that really affect the relationship they have with the employee who's going through this, and also the team. So there's conversations that I coach the manager to have. The first one is with the employee, and to understand what the employee wants. Does the employee want everybody to know? Does the employee want no one to know? How does the employee want this message? Does the employee even know what their treatment is going to be like? We assume cancer means that they're going to go bald, they're going to lose their face hair, they're going to get weak, they're going to lose a lot of weight. But that's a stereotype of what having cancer is. Like all stereotypes, there are some lightly based facts in it, but this is what we're sold in the media. So this is what we believe. But cancer is treated by surgery, by immunotherapy, by radiation, by chemo, and amazingly different kinds of chemo that have different kinds of side effects. So really, if the employee can tell you what their treatment plan is going to be, are they going to need to be out Thursdays and Fridays every week, right? So you can, the very important thing that managers need to do is gather a bunch of information from the employee, or have HR do it, right? So that if they're more comfortable talking to HR, so that you have a really good idea of, okay, once we have all this information, then we can start developing a plan. And that work plan, maybe the employees taking FMLA is going to be out for 3 months. Or that work plan may be, like I said, the employee is going to be out Thursdays and Fridays, or they're going to work half days on Wednesdays and go to treatment and maybe need Thursday off. And the other piece of that conversation is, really understanding, having those conversations with the employee and understanding what the employee wants. I worked with a client and we had a conversation with the employee. The employee said, I don't want to have to tell people I have cancer. I'm okay with them knowing, but I don't want to tell them. And here are the things I don't want them to say. I don't want any intrusive conversations about what kind of cancer is it? And, am I going to live? I don't want any of those conversations. Here's what I am willing to talk about. I'm willing to accept the love, happy to accept a meal. So by having conversations with the employee affected by cancer, we were able to outline, okay, team, this is how to talk to this person. And the team was relieved because they had some guardrails. So, helping the team engage is incredible because it increases employee engagement. It really helps with productivity because the team now knows what this person can and cannot do. And they really understand, okay, this is for 4 months, this is for 6 months, this may be for the full year. And then the employee knows how they're going to engage with the team and the organization as a whole. So there's a lot of nuance to this, but the basis is having an initial conversation with the leader or even the HR team to lead them through a series of questions that provide you with information that allow that will then predict then you can put together a plan with how how the team and the organization is going to react to this person, or act, not even react to the person's cancer.
Yeah, and I imagine that should be a fair amount of documentation so that there's, at least between the HR individual and the employee, so that there can be those guardrails, right? And while you can communicate that to the team, and so they're comfortable, some of those conversations, while they may be difficult, in a way, it kind of helps create a plan. And when that plan's specific, I'm sure it helps everybody in that situation. So then,
Exactly.
I'm a leader, okay, and I have someone on my team that is dealing with this, and it's a great worker. And I want to support them. How do I balance that with maybe what could be very high demands for getting work done? How do I balance the both? Because obviously for, a short period of time, you may have the other team that may jump in. But if it's a long-term thing, it could potentially put some additional weight on everybody else. And that would be a tough conversation to bring up and actually complain about, right? If the cause of that is someone having cancer. So how, as a leader, do you kind of navigate that tricky situation?
Yeah. So the first thing I find is very interesting. Leaders often have a response that they're not proud of. And when you have a key person come to you and tell you they have cancer, leaders' first thoughts are usually like, oh crap, what about that? We're going to miss our KPIs this month.
Right.
And then they feel guilty because that's their first thought. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person. But the reality is, as a manager, you are responsible for producing results. And so even if the effect of the team member's cancer is going to last for less than 6 weeks, just kind of bury your head and get it done. But if it's beyond 6 weeks, you need to have conversations with your employee. And so again, it doesn't matter how much they want to disclose, you do need to have a conversation with them about their work plan. So you've got all these projects on their plate, and this person has all the projects on the plate, and you need to figure out what they can and cannot do. And you need to continue to have this conversation, because after the first chemo treatment, people might be like, hey, I've got it. After the third chemo treatment, they may be like, yeah, remember I said I was going to take half a day on Thursday? Turns out I need all of Thursday and half a day on Friday to recover. So it's this constant conversation of here's what we have on our plate. Let's talk about what you can do. Let's talk about what you can't do. A couple things I always tell managers to keep in mind is, one, most employees will want to continue to work. We get our identity from working. And so what I see sometimes is managers take off the hardest projects, the ones that the employee is most engaged with, and just takes them off their plate as a way of doing them a favor. When in reality, what they're doing is they're causing the employee to be disengaged in the organization, and they're teaching the team to not come to the manager and talk about any personal issues that might be going on, because you will lose your favorite project. So that's often what happens. And the other thing that we talk to managers about is just, look, these are not easy conversations, but you still are responsible for your KPIs. So you have to figure out how you're going to get them done. And what I find is managers feel like are you either empathetic or you're hard driving, right? And there's no cross, but it's the Venn diagram. There's that beautiful center in between where you can be extremely empathetic and be supportive, and you can talk to the organization about what can we do for this person. Can we get them an Uber? Can we get them a share ride gift card so they don't have to worry about driving to and from treatment? Can we get them a meal plan so that they can have meals? Like, as an organization, you can do things that are that are sympathetic and helpful. And you can also have these hard conversations about performance, and not talking about, you need to perform at this high level, but you and the employee need to continue to have these conversations to meet performance, because sometimes you do have to let an employee go because they're just not able to work at the level that you and this person committed to, or that makes a difference on the team. But you have to have the documentation for it. There's obviously all sorts of laws around this. There's FMLA and there's ADA, which are very, very stringent about when you can let someone go who is dealing with this. But you have to be able to have those courageous conversations, and your employee will thank you because they want guardrails. They want to please you. They want to do the work. Most of them don't want to lose their job. And they're terrified. They're terrified of losing their jobs. They might need it for the healthcare. They're worried about, they might need the income. So keep in mind that the employee is also thinking like, I really, really want to work hard. And they're terrified that they're not going to be able to work as hard. So any type of conversation you can have that will put up guardrails is really helpful to both you and to them.
Yeah, all great points. And, sometimes I think courage is such a big factor in this, because there's never been a situation where a tough conversation in business, if you just push it off, that the situation resolves itself. Right. It never works. It never works. You have to have these conversations. If anything, they just get tougher, right? Because now maybe there's more of a time crunch, or, or it continues to be an issue, and now it's a bigger problem. Yep. So got to have courage as a leader to have those discussions. So let's talk about if the worst scenario happens, and let's say the employee has someone, it's their spouse, their significant other, or it's the employee themselves that has to experience and ends up experiencing death. How do we manage that in the workplace as leaders?
So there are two scenarios there. I think the first one, if it's the employee, I always, first of all, one of the things I really encourage HR teams or managers to do in the very beginning is, if the employee is the one with cancer, find a contact person for that employee. Maybe it's the employee's partner, maybe it's a sister, maybe it's an uncle, whatever it is, because you don't want to be calling that employee, especially if you're off on FMLA, you don't want to be calling that employee and saying, hey, how you doing? You want to be getting information from an outside source that will help you support them. So hopefully you have that. A lot of companies I was at an organization where they hired a bus, and people all got on the bus and went to the service of this employee. It was absolutely beautiful. But keep in mind that grief is not a one-day thing. It's not a 2-day thing. It's not a 3-month thing. It's not even a year thing. Grief occurs at random times when you least expect it, and it hits hard. So having a plan of how you want to manage, if you're in the office, how are you going to manage the cubicle or the office of the employee? How are you going to manage getting their personal stuff to the employee? I always recommend that you hold, even if it's a small team and you don't want anyone else, hold your own memorial service, right? Because memorial services are not for the person who's died. They are for the family, but in a way, some people consider work family. And so it's really beautiful to just put together a suite. It doesn't have to be 2 hours long. It can be 15 minutes, it can be 20 minutes, but it's a way to kind of close that gap, close that space. and to let the employees, give the employees an opportunity to grieve. So you can hold your own memorial service. Talk to the team about what's going to happen with the stuff. A lot of times team members want to, or companies really want to support the family of the employee who died. So talk about how you as an organization are going to do that. I often remind people, look, coming in the first 3 months is great, but what happens in death is people come in immediately and they're all there. And then it's almost like a snap of the fingers, people disappear. So around the 6-month mark after there's a loss, there's not as much support and help. That's a great time for the employees to come in and the company to come in and say, hey, we're here to do X, Y, and Z for you. If it's an employee who has lost a spouse, I think, making sure that we have some comments of what to say and what not to say is very important. And to understand that the employee's performance, especially as a leader, is not going to be what it used to be. And it may take 6 months to a year for them to get back to some type of high level productivity. And really understanding what that looks like. And again, having those honest conversations with the employee. But I don't recommend that you have them in the first month. I recommend that you wait till 8 weeks or the third month to sit down with them and say, okay, let's talk about your work plan for the next 6 months. One of the things I noticed about myself going through grief, and I talk to widows about this, we have no idea how we are not performing. We have absolutely no idea. Our brains are incredible mush. We think we're doing really well, or we might have a sense that we're not doing as well, but we have no idea how poorly we are performing. And so do not expect the employee who's dealing with loss to be like, hey, you know what? I'm a little spacey today. I'm feeling unfocused. They're going to try. They're going to be unfocused. They're going to think, I got this, but what often happens is, at the end of 1 month, you look back and you go, I thought I was functioning, but you weren't functioning. At the end of 3 months, you look back at 1 month and you think, oh, I thought I was functioning, but I was not functioning. And that continues to happen. So you're going to have those also honest conversations with them, especially after the 3-month mark about their work.
Yeah, all of those are really great suggestions and great ideas. And clearly you've been able to help your clients to do those things when they've experienced that in their workplace. So this has been a really good conversation. I think that it's a tough conversation for any of our listeners, for you yourself, who've had to have been in the middle of dealing with this. What's the one big, great lesson you would want any of my listeners to take away from this episode?
It's that you matter, and I would not be here doing what I am doing if it wasn't for all those people who picked up my kids after school, who drove my husband to the cancer support center, my friend who left a joke on the voicemail every single Wednesday after my husband died, that sometimes in the beginning, it was the only time I heard myself laugh, after my husband died. It's what you do really matters. So I really hope that people can walk through their fear and just show up, whether it's a coworker, your neighbor, whatever it is, because I felt supported and loved and cared for. And although most people could not understand my experience, it was okay because I felt supported and loved and cared for. And that passed on to my children. I have had the honor of watching them show up for their friends who've lost a parent, or at one point, one of my oldest son's high school friend or someone on the football team committed suicide, and the football players didn't know what to do, and he's like, "Here's what we're going to do." And so what you do is this ripple effect on everybody around. So that is the thing. I think I just really want people to know how much they matter. They really, really matter. And that one small act of love makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. And certainly you've been able to experience that. And obviously the work that you're doing has helped others be able to do that, and businesses to be able to support their employees. The book is called 100 Acts of Love. Very powerful stuff that you've shared with us today, Kim. I appreciate you giving us a few moments of your time. So let's have courage, right? To do those little things,
Yes.
be specific about what we can do for our friends, our coworkers that may be dealing with this, and never think that you can't make an impact with a small act of love.
Yes.
So very
Absolutely.
nice. Thank you so much for joining, Kim. This has been really nice. I appreciate you sharing your story with all of us and giving us all these great tips on how to support our family and our coworkers.
No worries. And if anyone wants to know, I have on my website a free download of 5 things never to say to anybody with cancer. And not only do I include what to say instead, but I explain why they're not good things to say. So you can sort of get a hint about what other not good things to say. So you can go to 100actsoflove.com, and that's the number 100, and / what not to say. No spaces, nothing in between, what not to say. And you'll get a free download of those incredible tips. And I just hope that people know, it's okay to have a do-over. We've not been taught how to manage any of this. It's not like there's a book and now there is, but it's not like, this has been passed down from generations. We are all kind of fumbling along and fumbling the way of just making the mistake of thinking that you matter. That's what I hope that people remember.
Nice. That's awesome. We'll put that website in the show notes so that our listeners can click right on it and get over there. So thanks again, Kim. This was a great conversation. Appreciate all the great work that you're doing coming out of, such a sad scenario that you went through yourself with your husband. Appreciate your time and sharing your story with all of us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your interest. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us on our journey to learn about various topics. If you'd like to get in touch with the Dad Who Knows Nothing, connect with him at the Dad Who Knows Nothing on TikTok and Instagram, or Dad Knows Zero on Twitter. If you have a moment and you like this episode, drop us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great day and enjoy your journey through this game called life.